Hello, and welcome to Remember the Film, the podcast where we talk about movies and all the things that make them memorable. I am one of your hosts, Jeff Grizz Ulrich, and with me as usual are Hugo Pinay and Josh Bradley. How are you guys doing today?
I'm also one of your hosts.
I'm doing all right. I actually finished my quarantine yesterday with
Freedom.
a negative result, and so I left the house yesterday for the first time in a month, and it was pretty good.
Fantastic.
So
What'd you do the
up.
first time out of the house in a month? What'd you do?
We're actually in a lockdown, so I couldn't really go anywhere. So I just walked around for a few hours.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, but it was still nice to not be in my bedroom all of the time. You know,
man,
it was pretty nice.
Same old for me.
Yeah.
This week on the show, we are talking about sports movies. And do you need to be a fan to be a fan? And
oh, that was cute. I like that.
Thank you. I thought about that for at least a couple of seconds.
Smooth. Yeah.
But yeah,
You
so
didn't prepare me
our
for
film
that.
to remember for this week is Rudy, the 1993 movie from David Ansbach. And I've never been confident on how to pronounce that. He has the same last name as one of my my cousin-in-laws, but for him it's Ansbach. But I don't know.
You could have given me 100 guesses as to who directed Rudy, and I would have not come up with David Ansbach. And maybe that's on me.
But yeah, and of
He's
course
also the
starring
director
Sean
of-
Astin, who a lot of people will of course remember more as Samwise Gamgee in The Lord of the Rings, or as the love interest in one of the seasons in Stranger Things.
Or the kid from Goonies.
What's his name?
Or the kid from Goonies. Yes, also a good pull.
Yes.
Yes. Can't remember her name, but I mean.
This movie is very near and dear to Josh and I, as we are both alums of Notre Dame.
Woo woo.
But we also just think it's a good movie.
I mean, it's a seminal classic of like the sports movie genre. Like that's indisputable, regardless of Notre Dame affiliation.
So we are greatly looking forward to hearing Hugo's thoughts as a unbiased.
Well, as a European with no knowledge of American football or Notre Dame.
Yeah. It's not even. My problem is not even that I don't know American football, because I mean, I don't get American football completely, but I can follow. I get the idea of a touchdown, and they throw the ball and he has to catch it and get it over the line or whatever. I get what tackling is. I have imagery in my head of what American football looks like. The
You
thing
didn't know what first down was this week,
no
did you?
frame of reference for is college football, college culture, the American school system, a whole lot of things that are in this movie that I really don't understand and I don't get, and it's quite jarring to see them on screen and try to figure out what's actually happening and why.
Well, it was a very
at some point there was a
formative
priest
time in our
teaching
lives.
at university, which to me
Who?
is something
Oh,
that
yeah.
I can't relate to at all. And
Yeah, we do
there's
that.
a whole bunch of little things like that in this movie. But I still my basic thoughts about the movie were that it was good. It was a good little inspirational story. But I think the reason why I really liked it is because it's the story of this guy putting himself through college despite being poor and dyslexic. While I didn't really care about the football side, to be honest, even though that's what the movie's about and why he's so determined to get through this college career, it's more about the football for him, apparently, although I think his accomplishments outside of the football are much, much more important than what he did in the football. But,
And
I think it's
he
not
gets
so
to
much
talking
that-
to
Good
about
movie.
that. Yeah.
I think it's not so much that the football is more important to him, it's that the football is the part that he has to do to fully prove to everyone that they were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that's stands out for him.
But yes, but I'm also, for the whole movie, I was that black janitor guy who was like, kid, you're getting through college, you're doing great. Why are you so sad all the time? You're doing fantastic. Like, stop being such a little depressed brat. Like, you're doing great. And he's mad that he's not playing with these amazing players, and I'm like, Yeah, but I mean, you even made the team. That's pretty good. You're 5'6" or whatever.
I don't think I don't think you're wrong for taking that character's side, though. I think that he is like something of a voice of reason. I mean, he's a reality check. I mean, he gives him that big speech like towards the end of Act 2 that is like his reality check, and that's like kind of what inspires him to kind of go back into it. Because at that point, he'd quit the team. I mean, are we in spoilers yet? I mean, this movie's almost 30 years old.
I'll go ahead and just throw it. I'll throw it up. We can go ahead and get into that.
Sure.
Yeah, you can spoil it. I mean,
so he's about to give up, and he's throwing himself a pity party and being all sad, but like that guy does kind of ground him more and be like, hey, look at the big picture here. You've already accomplished something incredible that not many people can accomplish, and like you're in a good spot and your life's heading in a good direction regardless of whether or not you play. So suck it up. Like I don't think you're wrong to side with that character.
Mm-hmm. But then the movie doesn't necessarily side with him, because at the end it's all about Rudy. It's about the fact that he gets to play, and his parents recognize him not just because of the college. Like until he's going to college, his parents and his brothers still treat him like shit for the whole movie, and it's like,
yeah, I mean, he's doing
something incredible. Like
they have to just because it's a movie and it's a narrative, they have to have like some kind of like remaining set of stakes. Oh yeah, end goal and stakes, exactly. So like originally, just his odds of going from just this factory worker in northern Illinois to a Notre Dame football player, the odds of that are incredibly long, basically impossible. But like once he does that at like, I don't know, the movie's midpoint or something, I don't remember when it happens, but like you got to have something to invest
an hour or something in.
Right, so they have to do the thing where, if you don't play, there's no official record that you were ever on the team. So like his end goal then becomes get into a game, which is far less likely than him making the practice squad, which he already made. And they have to do the thing where like his family doesn't respect him until he gets in and that kind of thing. And like to your point, I actually like that part of the movie less than the first half, which is more about him getting into the school and getting onto the team. Like that's by far my favorite part of the movie, the front end.
Well, and you talk about the parents, not being supportive, and like one of his brothers is an absolute just dick, just an awful person.
Yes.
But I think his dad, it was more about being supportive to an extent that he believed was reasonable. So, okay, you go, and he did, it was incremental for his father. His father says, okay, you can go for the weekend to South Bend. And then after his best friend died, which, was the, impetus for him finally deciding to
the inciting incident,
give this a shot. Yeah.
So, his dad says, go for the weekend. And then, obviously he doesn't just go for the weekend. He goes and, talks to a priest who helps him get into Holy Cross. And then and then he does well in school and he's getting good grades. And go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say that one of my favorite scenes is that scene at the bus stop with Ned Beatty and Sean Astin, his dad.
It's a great scene
where his dad basically says like, you'll have a good life if you just accept your lot in life. And he says, I don't want to be you or Dan or whatever. I don't remember the exact quote, but like, and he just. That's why this. I'm gonna repeat myself a lot this podcast. I think when we talk about like sports movies in general, but like the reason this is like a beloved story is it's just like quite simply about someone who wants more from their life and commits themselves to it 100% and works his tail off and gets it. And like that's like a very universal and very idealized version of the American dream.
That's where the movie got me too. But even coming back to that there is some. It is very melodramatic, though. Like, the whole first 45 minutes, it's like tragedy after tragedy. It's everything bad is happening to this specific person in this specific order. Like, he doesn't get into the college. He gets an awful job. Then his girlfriend leaves him. And then his friend dies.
Because he...
because he leaves. Right, that's true. That's fair. But then, and even that scene at the is it a bus stop or a train stop? I'm not sure. Bus stop is a good scene, but it's still like his father still sort of calls him stupid and says, "Oh, yeah, our family, we're gonna have a good life, but we're not smart, so we don't go to college."
I think he's more being realistic, supportive, but realistic, to Grizz's point.
Yeah.
Which is...
Yeah, no, I get it.
It's a tough line to walk. I mean, obviously,
Yes.
I'm not a parent. I don't know exactly how it is, but I can see how you could see one of your kids, and you've known them their whole life, and you have a level of expectation for them that they have basically set through their own actions and through school and all that. And so then when you see that he is trying to do something that would be far and away beyond anything he has ever achieved, you kind of want to temper his expectations a little bit and say, like,
look, doesn't get crushed. Yeah,
these dreams are great, but he didn't want his son to get so caught up in dreaming that he doesn't succeed in other ways. So I kind of can understand his dad's view on the whole thing, but I also love that as Rudy succeeds at things, like gets the grades at school, gets into Notre Dame, gets onto the practice team, his dad is buying more and more into his son's dreams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's another really cool moment, and it's the sort of thing that you do see in other sports movies.
Yes. Well, as we're talking about that, the other thing I want to say is I've seen this movie a bunch of times, as you can imagine, but I cry every time I watch it, and a few different places, but the number one place is when he gets his acceptance letter, ultimately.
It's a very good scene.
Hugo, you don't know much about Notre Dame. It's a tough school to get into, and like I actually didn't get into. I didn't get in at first. I got deferred, is what it's called. So like I had to I was on pins and needles waiting for my acceptance letter. When I finally got it, it was an emotional moment for me. So like seeing him get his acceptance letter is like an incredible emotional moment for him and for me, a viewer. And that's a beautiful
me
scene.
too. I didn't do the early application. For a lot of American schools, you can apply early, but for those schools, if you don't get in on the early application, then you won't get in later. You don't get put till later. Right. So my SAT scores weren't high enough to where I thought that I would definitely get in on the early application. So I waited.
I don't know what that means.
Oh,
it's like an entrance exam kind of thing.
It's a standardized test that basically decides if you go to college.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind of messed up that we still do this, but whatever.
Yeah.
But my scores on that test were good, but not positive
not
that I was going to get into Notre Dame. Yeah. So I applied the regular admission, and I was in the top 10% of my class in high school, which in Texas guarantees you admission to any state school.
Yeah.
So I was already in at UT or A&M, and so like I had a place I could go, but my brother was at Notre Dame. Both my parents went to Notre Dame. My grandparents, lived in South Bend. Like this is the family business, and if I don't get into Notre Dame, I'm going to be devastated. And the moment that I didn't even get the letter in the mail. We found out because my dad, in Catholic church, when you're getting married, they do these classes with other married people to tell you here's how to be a good Catholic married couple, right?
I'm not religious, but I live in Italy, so I get
the guy who did one of the guys and his wife that were the people that my parents talked to when they were getting married. It was in the admissions at Notre Dame, so my dad was without me knowing was apparently calling regularly to find out if I had gotten in.
I like that.
And so I found out on a bus, a school trip. My dad was up in the front of the bus. He was a teacher, and he calls back to me, "Jeff, you got in." It was a big moment, and so like Josh, I completely agree with that moment is
that's sort of
iconic.
Yes,
that's sort of for me a cultural distance that I had from this movie from the beginning, because in Italy, all universities are state schools, and except for very few. And so it's very rare that you don't get into university at all if you want to go. And it's, you might not get in your first choice, but your second choice is still the state school funded more or less in the same way. So even the quality of your studies is the same. And it's difficult that someone would have attachment for specific school institutions, because, they're all interchangeable to some degree. Some are a little better than others, but you don't really. I went to Bologna, but I don't have an attachment to the Bologna University at all, really.
That is very different then, because it's
It
not,
is completely
it's
different.
Not like that
So
here.
that is already something that is a little jarring for me. But
Sure.
overall, I think what's cool about this movie is that it did get me in the end, because for the whole
Right.
first 45 minutes, I was like annoyed by Rudy. I was his family. I was like, Rudy, you're doing okay. Like, you're 22 years old. You can afford to rent a house with your girlfriend. Like, maybe I'm a jaded Generation Z kid, but like to me, that's the goal. Like, you want to live comfortably and have a nice place where you
Well,
can be with the people you love. Like, it's something that is something that I see as a goal. And
in his defense,
he's always
this is
talking
probably,
about football, and I'm a little annoyed by him. But by the end of the movie, I'm completely on his side, and I think what he did is incredible. I'm
Right.
proud of him in a way, even though he was annoying at the beginning for me. So
To your
the
point
movie
about-
works in that sense, even if you're not on his side from the beginning.
to your point about the beginning part, I think it's probably an indictment of the American system, but I will say in his defense that having the blue collar life that he had, while comfortable and while completely livable and great, maybe more reality in the 60s than now, but his life would be considerably different if he had a degree from Notre Dame compared to
absolutely
the blue collar factory job he had. And again, maybe that's an indictment of our system that your life can improve that dramatically just by attending a school for 4 years, but that's a reality. I mean, the fact that football has nothing to do with that. Like, the fact that he was more concerned about playing on the team and not like getting a degree from a top 20 school in the country is maybe a different conversation. But
Right,
that's
priorities.
why
like,
I
could be
had that
called into
feeling
question.
towards
Right.
him. But then I think he changes his priority. The football becomes a symbol for him later on. At the beginning, it's all he cares about. But then as he goes on, he understands that it's just symbolic of him accomplishing something that nobody thought he would be able to. It's the underdog story. And at the end, the accomplishment is that he made it into the university, got a good degree, and he will eventually have a better life for it.
So real quick,
So I think it works.
before we move on to the main topic, I did want to just touch on a couple things about this as a movie and not just as a story that I think are really great about it. I think this movie has a top-notch score. The music in this movie
amazing,
is fantastic, and it's something that is often overlooked in sports movies in general. People always talk about the great movie scores. It's always from the big blockbusters that you think of the great movie scores. I think I would put Rudy's score up against just about any other score.
Agreed.
I think it's it's driving, it's emotional. I really love the music in Rudy.
They
It really
reused
fits
it.
with the story they're telling.
They reused it in Angels in the Outfield.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, which I saw Angels in the Outfield long before I ever saw Rudy. So like when I finally saw Rudy, I'm like, this is the Angels in the Outfield music. And real quick, sorry. Notre Dame, they went undefeated in 2012 and went 12-0 and went to the national title game. However, there was a very, very scary game against University of Pittsburgh that went to double overtime and required a fourth quarter comeback for Notre Dame. And I was watching that in my parents' house, and I was, during the fourth quarter when we were down several scores, I had my laptop open and was playing the music from Rudy. As we were watching the game to give us, and it worked. So
It worked.
Can't say that I was wrong, because it worked.
Other things I wanted to touch on
Amazing.
With the movie is I actually think it's a pretty well shot movie, considering that we don't really know the director, the cinematographer aren't people that are staples of cinema, but I really do think that it's shot well. Even on the football plays, the football scenes are action versus the more dramatic scenes where they're having the conversations, and I feel like they do a good job with both.
Great montages.
Yeah,
fantastic montages.
Oh,
Yeah,
love that
amazing.
in sports movies. Love a good montage.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
really like the scenes of him running underneath the stadium and the way the camera sort of pulls back as he's running towards it. I think those are really good.
I couldn't. Obviously, we couldn't get into the stadium like that at any given moment when we were students.
Well, but he was friend with the guy,
The groundskeeper, yeah.
The groundskeeper.
I would borrow my roommate's bike and go do laps around the stadium on the bike.
Amazing.
That was the
And is it
closest
the
I could
real
get.
stadium?
Yeah.
Was it shot at the real university?
All of this was shot on campus.
One of two movies
cool.
ever.
Yeah,
Nice.
the other one being Newt Rockne All-American, which
Yeah.
we will talk about later because I watched that this week. But that was some of the other fun factoids I just wanted to share. Was the whole time that he's studying at Holy Cross College, which is a real college right across the street from Notre Dame. All of those scenes were shot at Notre Dame in
Oshag, right?
In Oshag, which O'Shaughnessy is the name of the building.
Yeah.
And
Oshag to the locals.
Oshag to the students. So every time I see that, I'm like, I've been by that classroom.
I'm understanding what you're talking about.
You're familiar with the idea of buildings, right?
Yes, in classrooms.
Yes, but we don't have campuses in Italy. So
what?
That's a shame, man. That's a shame.
The university is inside the city. There are various buildings within a city. They're not a separate entity.
A lot of schools,
there's a lot of
schools are like that. Yeah, it depends on the school. Notre Dame happens to be a pretty insular campus where it's very campus here, South Bend, Indiana over here.
Because the university was founded, basically by accident. They were heading to California, and then they got snowed in, and then they decided to just go ahead and build the university there.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's the story.
Yeah,
that's the story.
And I guess Grizz, as long as you're talking about like the movie as a movie and its quality, it's also like really well written. Like it does a great job of establishing stakes. I kind of mentioned that already. And like Hugo, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, but like I think that like it does a good job. Like in the first scene, it's like him as a kid watching Notre Dame. His whole family's into it, so like Notre Dame football is like a presence in his life from childhood on. And like it, establishes that it's not a school that he would be able to get into, and
they laugh him off even as a kid.
Right, and his high school coach laughs him off and that kind of thing. He's small. Like I think it's a good job of whether you know football at all. I think it does a good job of telling you how long his odds are and how unlikely this is, and the fact that he gets turned down from the school like 4 different times or something like that, and like
I think he gets in on his last chance, the 4th try.
And I think it's just like stuff. Regardless of your feelings on Notre Dame or football, obviously me and Grizz have a very personal connection. I think it's still really good, and like I said at the top, it's a very universal, underdog work. Yeah, really hard to get what you want kind of story.
My only little things with it are some of the disconnect that I feel just culturally, and the fact that it's a really interesting story, and I think it could have done with like 10 to 15 minutes more where they talk about something else than football. Because he's always going on about football from beginning to end. And I feel like that doesn't allow enough time to underline what he's actually accomplishing, which is remarkable.
Yeah, I think maybe they could have spent a little more time. Spent a little more time with D-Bob, John Favreau's character. Building their friendship a little more and showing them studying more, which was the foundation of their friendship, was that D-Bob was tutoring him and Rudy was helping him meet girls.
Trying it.
By the trade-off.
Okay, well, so let's...
Again, overall, I think it works pretty well.
We need to transition,
let's rank it.
We need to rank it.
Yeah. So
pull
the
up
current
what's the list?
The current list is at number 1, The Thing, at number 2, Jackie Brown, and at number 3, The Sugarland Express. And we have to put Rudy in here.
Yeah, this is tough, because if you ask me which movie would I want to watch again, it's Rudy every time. But
but how do we rank it? I would put it either above or below Sugarland Express.
It's definitely above Sugarland Express for me.
100% above Sugarland Express, and I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be bold and put it above Jackie Brown.
You're gonna put it above Jackie Brown.
I think I agree. I think that there's and I know we're a little biased,
Well, even setting aside the fact that we went to this school, I mentioned when we were talking about The Thing that I maybe was being influenced by its reputation. Rudy has a sterling reputation as one of top 10 best sports movies of all time. Like it's an important movie in American culture. So maybe I'm letting that influence me a little bit, but to use air quotes, it's a more important movie than Jackie Brown.
And we were talking earlier, Hugo, about the college culture and how there's schools that hate other schools because of their sports and all that. And Notre Dame is hated by a lot of schools because of their Notre Dame historically is one of the best football programs.
College.
Historically, but also right now as well.
But also right now as well. But so people have grown up loving Notre Dame or hating Notre Dame. So people all have feelings about Notre Dame.
Correct.
And I think because of that, it's more impactful when I hear people say that they hate Notre Dame and they make jokes about Rudy being offsides on the play, on the play that he makes a big play at the end of the game, and they make jokes about Rudy all the time. But they also all agree that Rudy is just a good movie. So the fact that they can get over their hatred for our alma mater to say nice things about this movie, I kind of agree. And Jackie Brown, as we talked about, good movie. I really liked it. But it's not in that cultural space. It's not in the zeitgeist. It's not even in the zeitgeist of Tarantino movies. So
I mean,
no, not really.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I think Jackie Brown's great, but I think if anyone besides Tarantino made it, I think it would just be like a good '90s thriller that would be lost to time. Out of Sight or whatever. Out of Sight's a great movie too, but we won't talk about that anymore.
And I guess the cultural impact is something that I sent you a screenshot this week about, which was the Italian Wikipedia page for Rudy, and it's literally one line. It says, "Oh, Rudy is a 1993 film directed by David Anspaugh." That's the whole Wikipedia page. It doesn't say anything else. It doesn't even have stats on it. Nothing.
But
I'm
two
maybe
to
disconnected
one
from
here.
it, but
Josh and I say it's number 2.
2-1, you win. So the list now is The Thing, Rudy, Jackie Brown, and then The Sugarland.
One more underdog win for Rudy.
Rudy.
Okay, well, so let's move on to our main topic, which, as I said before, is do you have to be a fan to be a fan? And basically what I mean by that, in case it's not obvious, is do you have to be a fan of a particular sport to appreciate movies about that sport or movies that feature that sport heavily? So first, I just wanted to ask, what are some of our favorite sports movies? You want to go first, Josh?
Moneyball. I don't know if that's number 1, but it's close to number 1.
I also really enjoy Moneyball. So that's. What about you, Hugo?
Yeah, Moneyball is one, but I think my favorite might be Creed, like the first one, not the second one, with Michael B. Jordan.
Fantastic. Yeah, I have no problem with
that. Great
movie.
It takes Rocky, which is already good, and then adds on top of that a whole layer of social commentary, and I just love it.
It's tough for me to pick an absolute favorite other than Rudy, but I really love boxing movies. For some reason, those I just love those, and so Raging Bull.
There's several reasons to love boxing movies. We'll get into that.
Raging Bull is fantastic. I watched Cinderella Man earlier this week, and that it was really good.
Underrated. Cinderella Man's underrated.
Yeah, I think often forgotten in the pantheon of boxing movies, but
yes.
But yeah,
it's
so
great.
I also really liked Warrior, which is MMA. But I still think I'd pick Rudy over anything else.
A League of Their Own. I want to shout out A League of Their Own.
Oh yeah, great
movie.
Do our favorite movies tie? Do they match what our favorite sports are?
No.
I think that I was so I grew up loving baseball. I'm from St. Louis, and the Cardinals are a big deal. Hugo, the St. Louis Cardinals are a Major League Baseball team, and they're a big deal in the city that I grew up in. So I have to explain that to the European in the chat. So
I was going to ask, is that college or is it Major League?
It's Major League. So as a kid, I think I played baseball. I watched baseball every night. It's as a kid, I was very drawn to movies like The Sandlot, like League of Their Own, Rookie of the Year, and that kind of thing. I think my inclination was to watch those first, but as I grew up, I also saw other sports movies. So I think just if you're a fan of a sport, you're more inclined to take a chance on a movie about that sport, possibly. But I still love movies about sports I've never played or even watched before. So yes and no. I think you might be more inclined to like it, but
I think I'm more inclined to give a shot to a movie about baseball or about football, as those are the sports I liked best. And like Josh, I at some point in childhood I played pretty much every sport, but I played baseball the longest, and then obviously with the Notre Dame tie-in, football was just a part of living. And also in Texas, you wouldn't know this necessarily, Hugo, but Texas loves football. High school football is a religion in parts of Texas.
Yes.
Not in my part, thankfully. We enjoyed it. We enjoy football, but it's not the only thing going on in town, gratefully.
Yes.
But I also have given other sports. I've enjoyed movies from those as well, and even in some cases like them better than movies about sports that I love.
For me, I think it's a no, just simply because the sports that I like more have less movies that are good. Because I grew up playing football, like real football, not fake football like you Americans, play whatever. But there are really not that many good football movies. Like, I mean, soccer. I'm joking. It's soccer.
We know what you
want to call it.
We get it. Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I'm letting you have that. I'm letting you have that.
The old one. But there really aren't that many good, soccer movies. There are some movies that are about soccer, but very tangentially. Like Looking for Eric is a good movie, but it's more about the history of this man and as a fan of football rather than football itself. And even basketball, which is the other sport that I really like. There's some good movies, but I don't think they're quite as good as, for example, Moneyball and Creed, that are about sports that I don't really follow. But
I think basketball
movies in themselves. Yeah,
I think basketball movies have had a tougher time getting into the pantheon of great sports movies, but I think it's getting easier because basketball is becoming as popular or more popular than baseball. Baseball used to be the only show in town, really, for a lot of people. But basketball has grown so much, especially in recent years, especially since like Michael Jordan,
and internationally.
Yeah.
Because the NBA is huge everywhere, while football and baseball, I don't know anyone who follows football or baseball at all. Well,
and the NBA
all of my friends have a basic understanding of the NBA.
Yeah.
So and I think, I don't know, with the sports that I like, I think there are some very good documentaries about them, but not necessarily dramas or feature films, narrative feature films.
Okay. Well, so
well, one thing before we get to the fun thing, I just want to say one thing that we kind of danced around it, but I think that what makes Rudy great and what makes any sports movie great is that it's about more than the sport. And that's why you don't have to be a fan of the sport to enjoy the movies, because it's about something more universal than that. Like Rudy's about, long odds and working hard to achieve what you want to achieve. And Moneyball is about, shucking aside, the years-long knowledge of a certain system and kind of forging your own path because you have no choice. Remember the Titans is about race and that kind of thing.
Race relations.
Yeah, exactly. Earlier this year, the Way Back Ben Affleck movie, I watched that this week. It's about a guy struggling with alcoholism. A League of Their Own is about, a gender getting respect in a society and also a girl getting respect in her family. It's about more than the game itself. And any good sports movie is about more than the game itself. And so that's why I think it doesn't necessarily matter if you know the sport.
Well, so then before we go into the fun thing, because I do want to, one of the other things that we were going to talk about is related to that. Is you were saying that, oh my God, I'm blanking. Let me go to my notes. Oh my God. So the movies that don't really dive into the minutia of a game, and are more focused on the other aspects. Do you think that it makes those movies more, we think it makes those more enjoyable for the general public, but do you think that diehard fans of a sport would appreciate that movie more if it did delve into the game more?
It depends. I mean, I think what's important is that an important aspect and a difficult aspect of sports movies is then when they are showing the sport being played, it has to look good. And there are certain sports that are just harder to make them look good when it's not actual players playing them. And so that's one of the reasons why some sports, I think, work better, even regardless of teams and the story and whatever. But you know what I mean? I think the sport does matter in that sense, because you can teach an actor to make, baseball look good, because you can
Right.
teach them a basic movement and make it look good. But if you're playing football and you don't have the touch, I mean,
Soccer football.
our football, yeah, soccer football. If you're playing football and you don't have touch, and the way you kick the ball doesn't look realistic,
Or even
every
if you
single
can't
fan is going
run
to
well.
notice. Yeah,
Well-
every single fan is going to notice instantly, and it's just going to, make your film not work.
I watched
that's
a movie last night, The Damned United, which came out just a few years ago. Have you seen that, Hugo?
No, I haven't. No.
Well, it's about.
What's it about?
It's about Brian Clough, who was the coach for Derby County in the in Premier League, and then he gets the job to coach Leeds United, and which he I'm not going to go into all the details of the movie, but he had a big rivalry with the previous coach of Leeds United, and so the movie's about that, and But what I wanted to touch on with this was that the scenes where they like show the teams practicing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I was like, oh man, why would you do that? These guys look like they've never kicked a soccer ball.
Yeah.
They looked
That
goofy.
does happen, unfortunately.
It happens in certain movies. You're right. I think basketball to some extent people can look kind of goofy.
Basketball,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean,
even the good ones, sometimes they
to-
look ridiculous.
To your point, Hugo, I actually was going to say that the minutia doesn't necessarily matter, and if I'm thinking about Moneyball is about the minutia to some extent. So, I think that would satisfy fans of baseball and not. But I'm also thinking of Rookie of the Year, which is a amazing baseball movie, but it's about a 12-year-old pitching for the Cubs. So it's amazingly far-fetched and stupid and outlandish. And if you're taking issue with things in that movie because it doesn't get aspects of baseball right, I think that you're probably watching it for the wrong reasons and maybe
You're missing the point.
take a chill pill.
For sure,
right?
yeah.
You're missing the point. However, when you're talking about it has to look right, I think you're onto something. I can't remember what podcast I was listening to. I think it was a Ringer podcast, but they're talking about how in baseball movies, if the guy can't throw, if he doesn't have a good throwing motion, it really ruins it. And I can't.
It takes
it
you
might
out.
have been The Natural or something, but that takes me out of it. If it looks like the guy can't throw and it just the motion doesn't look right, and for you soccer, for basketball, that kind of sucks. So I guess I guess in that aspect I kind of changed my answer a bit.
The general consensus is that you have to get at the very least the basics down.
It just go to He Got Game. He Got Game, good movie. It has basically the problem with He Got Game is it's Ray Allen, who's a real
An
NBA
actual
player,
basketball player.
the film. Yeah, a real NBA player, and his father is played by Denzel Washington, and so the Ray Allen isn't very good at acting, and Denzel, well, he's fine, but he's not very good at basketball. And so when they're playing against each other, it just kind of doesn't work because Denzel is supposed to be hanging in with him, and he clearly could never do that. His jumper doesn't look good. I'm sure they did 1,000 takes to get him to throw down to sink the shots, and and on the other side when they're acting, Ray Allen just can't act, and he just sounds completely monotone every time he opens his mouth. And so you have to balance it. And I think what some of these movies do really well is they cast maybe either, I don't know, for example, I know that Creed and Creed 2 has, I'm not sure if they're MMA fighters or wrestlers. And so they cast people who can make the sport look good and act enough that the few lines that they're going to have don't sound ridiculous. Yeah. And I think it's a good balance that they have to strike.
It works with boxers and MMA fighters and wrestlers, wrestlers in particular, because there's a lot of performance involved outside of just the actual combat.
Exactly.
So I think
even
that
boxers,
caters. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Even with boxers, there's so much showmanship
speaking in public. Yeah.
That it
sort of works.
Gives them a leg up on other sports where those people, the most they have to talk is at the end of the game, and they say, "Oh yeah, they almost had us there for a little while, but then the team really came together." And those people don't know how to act.
Exactly. And even Space Jam, childhood favorite for me.
Space Jam so much.
Michael Jordan clearly is reading his lines. They're feeding him his lines, and he's just saying them. But it kind of works because it's so ridiculous. But still,
when you find out that the whole time he's filming Space Jam, that he had a whole arena built so that he could bring other basketball players in to play while he's filming
because
Space Jam.
that was the year after the comeback. That was the year where he was getting back into basketball shape.
Right.
And, you know.
Yeah,
Great story.
His priority was probably not on delivering an Oscar-worthy performance.
He did
in
not
Space
care
Jam.
at all about the movie. No.
Okay, well, let's do our fun
though.
segment. We wanted to do something fun here. We're all sports fans, for one thing or another. But Hugo definitely claimed to be the least sports fan.
It's not like I'm not a sports fan. It's just American sports
he's
I've
European,
never watched, so I don't get.
Right.
Well,
I follow tennis. I follow basketball because it's international. I follow a bit of soccer, and I've played soccer for a long time, so I understand those sports. But then when you get into baseball or football or hockey or whatever, I'm just a complete. I don't know anything about them.
So I put together a list of terms from various sports, not just ones that I'm confident that Hugo does not know what they are, but other ones.
Yep.
And Josh is going to throw out some as well off the top of his head. But what we're going to do here is I'm going to name a term, and Hugo is going to tell us what sport he believes that term is from, and give us a shot in the dark on what it is.
Can somebody throw out some Jeopardy music or whatever?
So the first one I have for you is encroachment.
Oh God, you're not going easy, are you?
No, some of them are easy, some of them are not.
Encroachment is
what sport?
When
what sport do you think it is?
I think it's football, and
correct.
I think it means when players get tangled up and it stops the play for some reason.
I mean, that's not the worst answer you could have given.
Okay, what is it?
Encroachment, the defensive players cross the line of scrimmage before the ball is snapped.
This isn't going to work. There's too much to explain here.
Okay, how about...
I get it. Okay.
How about a red shirt?
What sport?
A red shirt?
Yeah.
A red shirt.
Just to put it in context, you'd call someone, he's a red shirt freshman. Or, red shirt quarterback.
These are tough.
So it's football.
It's football. I didn't know what this meant until I got to college myself. So.
Yeah, you're not going easy on me though.
I told you there's going to be some easy ones.
Okay. Okay, a red shirt is a red shirt quarterback, a red shirt freshman. He's a guy that plays both offense and defense.
Boy, that's actually not like that. I could see that being a thing.
That's a sensible guess.
Yeah,
it's wrong.
Yeah, that's
but
a sensible guess. Wrong, but sensible.
What is
so a player wearing a red shirt in practice is a player who's not eligible to play. So they put him in a red shirt so that not to hit him, so that you don't injure them unnecessarily. It's usually, but in college football, if you don't play at all in a year, you can redshirt a year and get an extra year of eligibility to keep playing.
Okay.
Because otherwise you only get 4 years of eligibility in college.
Right. So you're avoiding getting hurt.
You're avoiding getting hurt for that whole year.
So you're not
avoiding playing.
So you're not actively trying to get brain damage, which is what Rudy was doing in that movie.
Yes, he was trying so hard to get brain damage.
He was really trying to get hurt.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
How about
Please go easier.
An easy one.
Okay.
What is a shortstop?
Shortstop is a shortstop is when the batter in baseball hits the ball, but he doesn't make it to the first base.
Okay, well, you got the right sport. It is baseball.
Okay.
Josh, what is a shortstop?
Shortstop is a infield position where a fielder stands between second and third base.
Okay.
That's one of the positions in baseball.
It's one of the, right.
All the other positions are usually pretty obvious what they are. So like the first baseman stands at first base.
It was okay.
Third
that's
baseman.
Not obvious at all. That's not obvious at all though, because in Moneyball, there's a whole scene where they talk about this first baseman, and then afterwards I looked it up and I got it. But the whole scene is oh, this guy, he can get to base, but he can't play first base. And I was like, what does that mean? he can get to base, but he can't play first base.
Okay, let me do one. I got one.
So he can't get to base?
Over, Josh.
I don't get it.
Hugo, what is a squeeze play?
That's a good one.
Oh, guys. When
give me a sport first.
Give
me a sport.
football, and it's when two people tackle the same guy at once from two sides, which is a foul.
I'm not gonna start calling that a
They
squeeze
squeeze him.
play when two guys tackle the same guy.
This is definitely going to be a squeeze play going forward.
No, that's in baseball. It's a play in baseball where you have a runner on third, and the runner runs home as the pitch is delivered, and the batter bunts it, gets the ball down, and the runner scores before the fielder can throw home.
Which brings us to our next one. What's a bunt?
It's baseball.
It is baseball.
Good guess.
It's when the runner is about to get to the base, but
Nope.
he doesn't make it, and the guy catches the ball. I don't know, a bunt. You guys are making words up, I swear.
Yeah, that baseball's
I swear.
fun for that.
I think you guys.
There's a lot of really made-up sounding words in baseball.
At home together, just making up words just to make me look stupid or something.
Okay, well,
'Cause
let's
these have to be fake.
how about this?
have
What's a
another one.
3-point
Hold on.
play?
Okay.
It's.
Sorry,
I mean, is that basketball?
it is basketball.
Well, super play
You
is
should know
when
this then.
it's when someone is fouled in the act of shooting, but he actually makes the basket,
Yes.
and so he has a chance to shoot one free throw.
See,
And
I knew
if he
Hugo
makes
would
it,
know
that's
that
a
one.
3-point play.
Okay, I have a good
There
one.
you go.
I have a good one. Hugo, what is hooking?
I had that on my list as well.
Okay, good.
Hooking.
And not in Amsterdam, in sports.
Right. Yeah. In sports, I mean, hooking. What could hooking be? Is it football, and is it some sort of illegal tackle?
I'll tell you, it is illegal, but it is not football.
Right. It's not football. But okay, I have no idea then. What does it mean?
It's just a penalty in hockey, right? Where you just like grab someone with your stick,
Right.
with the edge of your stick.
You hook
kind of,
someone
like,
with
pull on
your
them.
stick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly what it sounds
I wasn't
like.
even thinking about hockey.
It's just
Yeah,
hilarious. That's a penalty. 5 minutes for hooking. Go to the penalty box because you were hooking. It's just hilarious to me.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Okay, how about what is a homer?
A homer is the father in The Simpsons.
Well done. That is correct.
No, sorry, that was a horrible joke. It's a home run. It's
Yes,
like
it
when
is.
when the batter hits it out of the park, and so he can go the whole way round and score a point.
And what are those points called?
What?
What are points in
What are the
baseball
points called in baseball? What are they called?
Points. They're
They're not
runs.
called points.
Runs. Very good.
Okay,
Very
yeah,
good.
okay, good.
Runs.
Okay.
Yes. I wasn't sure if it was runs or inning. Is innings a baseball word?
That
Yes,
is
it
in
is.
fact
Innings are, but they're like it's like a measure of time, an inning, or
Well,
or
it's not quite
streaks
time, but
of
it's how
the game.
Measurements of
they
play,
measure
yeah.
the sections of the game. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like
Okay.
yeah, like a quarter in or a half in basketball.
Yeah.
Only not a set
Getting
amount of
there,
time.
getting
which
there.
is-
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's
Um,
confusing too, but let's not get into that.
Okay. Well, so how about what is a power play?
Nice.
A power play is when the person that's running with the ball in football manages to run through tackles and go forward.
Managed to avoid the squeeze play and run through them.
Well, he can avoid the squeeze play, and then this is getting sexual, guys. I can't.
Yeah.
It's a
so
term
power
in
play
hockey.
is
Yeah.
in hockey.
Is in hockey, okay.
Yeah. So when
And-
someone is in the penalty box getting 5 minutes for hooking, that they
Or
aren't
what
able
have
to
you.
replace that player on the ice, so the other team is playing with the advantage, and that's called a power play.
It's
They
five
have,
guys
they have
against
more
four
players
guys.
on the ice.
Yeah.
Oh,
5 guys
okay.
against 4 guys.
Oh, okay. So they have temporary people being
When you
people
get a
being
penalty in
ejected
hockey, you are
temporarily
out of the game for a set amount
for
of
a
time.
for a set amount of time.
For
Okay,
between
that's
2 and 5
interesting.
minutes. Yeah.
Right.
So during that time, the other team obviously has a greater chance to score because they have one less player to defend. So that's called a power play.
That's weird. I thought it would be like soccer where you can get ejected and then the team is in one person shot.
You can also be ejected.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen in
punching
hockey
the ref in the face
so much anymore because most of the time you just get put in the penalty box.
Right.
Okay, so how about castling?
Oh, shut up. Come on. I have no idea.
I only think I know this one. Can I guess after he guesses?
Yeah.
Come on, if Josh doesn't know, you're...
I'm cheating with this a little bit. What do you got, Josh?
Cheating, yeah.
Just go for it.
Is that a chess term?
It is a chess term.
Okay. Is that when you replace
a chess term?
the rook and the king switch places? Is that right?
Come on.
More or less, yeah.
Okay.
You can only do it if your rook hasn't moved and your king hasn't moved.
Yeah. I know the move. I can play chess, but I can play chess in Italian. That's an arrocco. Say it with me, arrocco.
Arrocco.
I can't roll my R's, so no.
Oh, come on.
I actually.
Here's one of my favorites.
Fact, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I used to be able to roll my R's until I got my tonsils taken out, and now I can no longer roll my R's. So the night before I got my tonsils taken out, my wife took a video of me doing my chewy sound for the last time, and now I can no longer make a chewy sound.
Again.
Yes.
Oh no.
Okay, well, let's do a couple more. What is a Fosbury flop?
A what?
A Fosbury flop.
That's a dessert from Dairy Queen.
This one's really tough.
It's a flop named after a player that was named Fosbury.
So
it's something in basketball.
It's in. They do flop a lot in basketball.
They do flop a lot in basketball.
No, Fosbury was. This is a track and field in the high jump and pole vault. When they go over the bar,
yes.
They used to go head first over the bar until Fosbury came up with the idea of arching his back.
Where they go backwards.
So they go backwards. That's called a Fosbury flop.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you're going international with this.
Yeah, so I wanted to work in some stuff that's not just football and baseball.
You should go for curling and skiing.
I was, I thought about putting moguls, but I figured you probably know what moguls are.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay.
What's that?
It's in skiing, moguls. It's one of the competitions, the little bumps of snow.
Okay. Yeah, no. I can ski, but see, all of these sports, because aside from, let's say, football a bit, like soccer, again, I forget about that, and basketball, which I have followed in English. Most other sports that I've seen a bit in my life.
I want to do two more.
Are usually in Italian, so I don't know them.
What is a quaffle?
This is cheap.
A quaffle is Quidditch.
Darn right it is.
It's the ball from Quidditch.
I just wanted to. I wanted to throw that in.
You can't get me with Harry Potter. You can't get me with Harry Potter.
All right, and the last one I wanted to do is because it's one of my favorite. Excellent. It actually looks kind of like you.
Yeah. I don't have the.
What is
accent is the same.
What is a punt?
Punt is
not to be confused with a bunt, which is different.
A punt.
Confused with a bunt. A punt is a kind of kick in the MMA.
So close.
Interesting.
Am I?
It's a kind of kick in football.
Is it? In football.
Well,
okay.
I'm sure MMA is like stealing the term from football.
Actually, no. You know what it is? A punt kick is a finisher that Randy Orton used to do in the WWE, and I think it may come from football.
Probably does.
That's where it came into my head.
Yeah, it's
any kind of
I think drop kick.
Yeah, a general punt is just like taking something from your hands, dropping it from your hands, and then kicking it out of the air. That's like what a punt is in general.
Okay.
And I'm assuming the Randy Orton move is similar to that.
Yeah,
I would agree.
It is. It was. I don't know.
So that was fun. I really enjoyed that, and
I did.
I did have other ones that I'm confident. Like I was going to throw in traveling. I know that Hugo knows what traveling is.
Yeah.
So, but it was more fun to pick things that he probably didn't know.
Yeah, it's probably hard to get me with basketball. I think
you're probably right. Another basketball one I had in there was the triangle.
Yeah, the triangle offense.
Very good.
Just what the Chicago Bulls did.
Okay, well, so let's finish up with our other questions. Are we due for a great sports movie about a less popular sport? Like obviously soccer's not as popular in the U.S. as it is in other parts of the world, like soccer or I see that one of you made the question, does the Queen's Gambit count? And that's obviously a chess thing. And I would think it does.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that...
I would say yes.
Well, it's a sport. Chess is definitely a sport. And I think, like, Queen's Gambit, there is 7 episodes, but it is, like, all the same writer and the same director and the same, like, production team. It's basically just a 7-hour-long movie, effectively. Like, I think that counts for sure. And it was also amazingly popular for Netflix. Like, a lot of eyeballs got on the Queen's Gambit.
Yeah.
I think surprisingly popular, actually, considering what the subject matter is.
I think we're starved for entertainment.
Well,
maybe.
To
or
repeat
Netflix
myself,
is just really good at marketing,
To repeat myself, it's about more than just chess. It's about a lot of other stuff besides chess.
I'm sure it's about gender relations and
what sport?
I've seen it, but
what sport do you think will be a breakthrough thing that what's the next sports movie that's going to make people fans of a sport that they weren't fans of before? What sport is that going to be?
I don't know because first of all, because some of the most popular sports in the world are not that popular in the US, and all of the big sports movies are made in the US. So unless the UK decides to produce something about rugby or cricket or even soccer to a lesser extent, it's tough for sports that Americans don't care about to have a breakthrough through movies. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Because, no Hollywood studio is ever going to make a sports movie about cricket, and cricket is, I think, the third most watched sport in the world.
You say that
in terms of how many people actually watch it.
Disney took a chance on making something that was cricket, related. $1 Million Arm, starring John Hamm.
When was this?
And that came out a few years ago. But really, what it was, the movie was more about John Hamm wanted to find baseball players, and so he went to India to get cricket players to teach them to play baseball. So tangential.
Cricket, by the way, is the most incomprehensible sport you'll ever watch in your life.
I've tried. I do not understand it at all, and I'm pretty sports knowledgeable.
Yeah, I don't get it. I just have no idea. I also, there was some Pakistani kids that lived close to me, and on Sundays they used to all go to this football field, which was sort of a public football field, and there was a moment on Sundays where no one was playing, and they would just play cricket for hours, and I used to go there and watch them, and I had no idea what was going on, and I tried to ask them to explain it to me, and I just couldn't get it, but it was fun. It's sort of a weird sport. It's fun to watch, but I have no idea what's happening in it.
I wonder if certain sports are more cinematic than others, or lend themselves more to the style of storytelling. I'm thinking about how baseball and football, and to some extent basketball, all have natural stoppages in play that soccer does not have. And so I wonder if you can't have the contemplative moments or the dialogue that you can have in those sports. But I haven't seen Ted Lasso yet, but that's a very popular soccer show at the moment on Apple TV. But I don't know how that does it. But the moments, the in-between moments is where the drama is, and can you have that as much in a soccer movie where there's no stoppages in play?
Yeah, I do think some sports are just easier to make look good and have some built-in breaks that allow for dramatic moments. And I think the perfect example of this is boxing, because it is a really dramatic sport compared to many others, because anything can happen at any moment that can completely change the result of the match. And the fact that in boxing you can shoot the actual sport as if it was an action scene, a fight scene in in a Jackie Chan movie. You can choreograph it that way. And so there's already sort of a built-in knowledge even that filmmakers have that they can use to shoot those types of movies.
Well, and actually that does bring
one of the reasons why it's easier to work.
What was that, Josh?
I was just going to say that the fight scenes in Creed and Raging Bull both are just unreal, and how beautiful and horrifying they both are. Some of the greatest scenes I've ever seen are the fight scenes in Raging Bull.
So, and this did bring back a question that I accidentally skipped over in our outline earlier. Are movies that are simpler in are sports that are simpler in concept easier to make movies about? So, like for instance, we're talking about boxing. Even a general, passersby who just happens to walk into a boxing match is going to be able to kind of understand the guy who's hitting
What's
the other
happening.
person more is winning.
Yeah.
Right.
Does
Or the
that
guy
make
who
it
falls
easier to
down
know?
easier to
doesn't get up.
dramatize.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think
it
that
does.
to kind of repeat myself, I think that sports movies, or at least the good ones, are about more than the sport themselves, and the sport is more just a vehicle. It's a simple structure, like, hey, you got a game coming up, you better win. Like, it's just a structure to put your story on top of, and like boxing lends itself to that really, really, really well, probably more than other sports do, because it's like a one-on-one thing, lends itself to training montages.
It's easier to make a movie about a character.
I think it works really well with racing as well. We haven't talked much about racing.
Racing is another one, yes.
Because
but
it's
I
a very
do
simple
think-
concept. The person who gets to the other point first wins.
Wins.
And so then you can
And it's not
do
just
whatever
that they're
narrative
simple.
you want around that.
Right.
It's not just that they're simple. That it's first of all they're individual, which means you can make a character
Yes.
study, which is tangentially about racing and boxing, or even tennis. You could, but tennis doesn't work because you can't make it look good. But I do think that it does come back to the fact that you can make it work cinematically, and then you can because you can write a really good script about any sport, I think. But making it work then when you're putting image to screen is different. It can be really challenging with some sports. And even with these sports movies that I've watched this week, for example, even Moneyball and Remember the Titans and even Rudy, they don't have as many football or baseball scenes as they could, because it's hard to do that with actors, and it's hard to not make it look like it's just a sports
Watching a
scene
sport.
that they took from TV, and then that's not very cinematic, It's difficult to do that, and I do think that some of these sports that are easier to make them look good, it's also easier to create drama around them because you already have a basis of what the movie is going to look like, which helps. It's a visual medium after all, and I do think that's why they work better. Well, I won't say that they work better, but I think that it's easier for a general audience to get into them.
Okay, well, so I think
Rocky was a huge success.
Time to wrap up. So I guess one thing that I would want to say regarding this question of do you have to be a fan of sports movies? I think we all agree that no, you don't have to,
No.
you don't absolutely have to. It might help a little, and it certainly would encourage people would be more encouraged to see a movie about a sport that they're familiar with. But if I could encourage people to do anything after this episode, it would be to go ahead and try watching some sports movies about sports you're not familiar with, because as Josh has said a bunch of times, it's really not about the sport.
Yeah. Or even when it is, the good ones make it work enough. Like Moneyball is very technical. It's very much about baseball, but it's so well written and so well acted that it works even if you don't understand it at all. And to be fair, Brad Pitt, you can put him on the screen and make him read the phone book, and it'll be really entertaining. So that's another thing. But
Any other thoughts, guys?
no, not really.
I have no
I think
thoughts.
we answered the question thoroughly.
So next week, our topic is going to be David Fincher, and so we're going to be starting with a double feature for our film to remember. We're gonna do two movies next week. The first is Citizen Kane, which obviously is not directed by David Fincher, but we're watching Citizen Kane because the second movie that we're going to watch is the new David Fincher movie Mank, which is very much about Citizen Kane. So
and it's coming out on the 4th, I think?
It comes out on
Netflix?
December 4th on Netflix. So we're going to watch that, and then we're going to watch Citizen Kane. We're going to talk about both of those next week, and then we'll get into a discussion of David Fincher. So again, thank you for joining us, and you guys have a great week.